Coming up on the news tonight, EC starts preparations towards November 7th general elections.
Additional security deployed to Agogo in renewed determination to clamp down on Fulani herdsmen.
And in cattle farmers in Accra warned against allowing animals to roam on the streets.
And Somalia launches investigation into emergency landing of a commercial plane.
Hello, good evening. Many thanks for joining us here on GBC24, also live on GTV. This is News Hour, and my name is Abdul Hayi Momen.
I am Shirley Annan.
In our very first story, the Electoral Commission says it has already started preparations towards the November 7th general elections.
Speaking exclusively to GBC24, the Director for Public Affairs, Mr. Christian Owusu-Parry, said unlike previous exercises, the Commission will interact more with the voting public in the run-up to the day to ensure that all have enough education for a free, fair and credible vote.
According to Mr. Owusu-Parry, the Commission has started its preparations for the limited registration of those who turned 18 after the last elections or those who are older but have never registered. He said since the current polling stations would be increased to 29,000, a committee is in place to look at the issues of demarcation.
They are looking at which areas will deserve new polling stations. They are also looking at the registered population figures in the various polling stations to see which ones can be split. So all these things are happening internally. Besides that, we are in the process of procuring the necessary items that we'll need for the registration of voters.
He added that currently the Commission has no means of knowing the true age of anybody who comes to register, saying that prevention of minors or multiple registration is a responsibility of all Ghanaians.
I'm cautioning everybody who is already registered as a voter that under no circumstances should they attempt to register again. If you lose your ID card, if you have relocated, if your ID card is damaged, you have to apply for a replacement. As for minors getting onto the register, I think that the compilation of the voters register is a shared responsibility. Commission, all the stakeholders, political parties, and every citizen who is concerned about the voters register should take interest in ensuring that minors do not get onto the register.
Mr. Owusu-Parry said the Commission will hold discussions with political parties to identify appropriate ways to thoroughly clean the register before the November elections.
We will have to agree with them on how we are going to ensure that the register is clean.
He said the Commission will also be more interactive with the voting public.
Even though it is public knowledge that the Supreme Court has ruled that the National Health Insurance Card in its present form cannot be used for voter registration, it is still in the law and we have to take it out. And we can't be certain that everybody in Ghana today is aware of the Supreme Court decision. So it will take our effort to let them know that, yes, you cannot use the National Health Insurance Card anymore for registration of voters.
When approved by Parliament, the CI-72 will be the new regulation to go by to register voters.
In other news, President John Mahama has responded to critics of the Kaswa interchange. He calls them political quantity surveyors who are perhaps oblivious of the full complement of the project they describe as too expensive.
Inspecting the interchange at Kaswa in the central region, Mr. Mahama explained what some call inflated project costs as a disregard for the additional facilities to be provided along with the main interchange. Napoleon Atikito reports.
Kaswa, a fast-growing commercial town in the central region, in closest proximity to Accra. Its population has grown from 863 in 1975 to over 100,000 currently. Located along the highway, extending from Accra to the western region, Kaswa experienced large volumes of vehicular traffic. 6,000 vehicles per hour during peak time, and a daily average of 23,000 vehicles. The statistic, which explains why the government has found it most expedient to construct an interchange at Kaswa, is this one. 5 kilometers per hour is the travel speed when you hit Kaswa. The gridlock is notorious. Even before the president came to cut sword for the project, the Brazilian company awarded the contract had already erected pillars for the 3-tier flyover. Quiros Galvao is same company executing the Nkrumah interchange at Circle Accra. The Brazilian ambassador to Ghana commended the government of Ghana for showing commitment to development. Brazil released the funds for the Kaswa project after prospecting by the Mahama administration.
Such cooperation has been growing hand in hand with the firm commitment of President Mahama and his government to the improvement of living conditions of all Ghanaians, particularly through the expansion of infrastructures which are essential to the continued economic and social development of this country.
President Mahama said the project will ease traffic.
We therefore appropriately reviewed the challenges here and designed a solution that will effectively tackle the challenge and bring enormous project benefits, not only for commuters passing through Kaswa, but also for the inhabitants of Kaswa and surrounding areas.
He mentioned the components of the project.
There are many things that influence the cost of a project. And so if you build a regional hospital in one place, it doesn't mean that the cost will be the same as a regional hospital in another place. Often, if you want to know the cost of an item, you have to examine the item and examine the components that go into making the item. You cannot just stand at a distance and look at two items and determine that the cost of the item must be this just because of looking at it at a distance. You must know the components that constitute the items to be able to know the cost of the item. But when you're a political quantity surveyor and you look at Kaswa interchange and say, oh, it's too expensive, I mean, what are you talking about? You haven't seen the scope of works. You haven't seen the bill of quantities. You haven't done a survey of building materials around here in Kaswa area, and you're able to judge that the cost is too expensive.
He said owners of private property to be affected by the project will be compensated. The president said a total of 95 kilometers of road in Cape Coast, Elmina, Salt Pond, Winneba and Agunasredro will be asphalted. Between Accra and Tema, about 175 kilometers of road are being given similar treatment. He said new roads will be paved to directly link Kaswa with Amasaman. Napoleon Atukito reporting.
The Ashanti Regional Security Council is to deploy additional security to Agogo in a renewed determination to clamp down on Fulani herdsmen whose activities are reported to have led to instability and economic losses in that part of the country. In Kumasi on Thursday, the outgoing regional minister, Mr. Peter Nefi Mensah, said the decision to increase security presence in the troubled area is pursuant to a court order issued in 2013 to rid the area of the nomads. Earlier in the day, our Ashanti regional correspondent Thomas Insweji gave us some updates of the meeting.
In the countryside, they are taking
to clamp down on Fulani herdsmen whose activities are reported to have led to instability and economic losses in that part of the country. In Kumasi on Thursday, the outgoing regional minister, Mr. Peter Anefi Mensah, said the decision to increase security presence in the troubled area is in pursuant of a court order issued in 2013 to rid the area of the nomads. We're trying to get back to our Ashanti regional correspondent, Thomas Nsueje, who I hope is on the line. Hello, Thomas.
Good afternoon.
Hello, Thomas.
Hello, good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Right, Thomas, it's great to have you on the line. Tell us what the current situation in Algo is at the moment.
Yes, from the RECSEC meeting we had this morning, all points to the fact that there is a serious fear and panic in the Algo area. Since the press conference was organized there by the youth in the area and addressed by the MP for the area and the one who to them back. According to RECSEC, since the press conference was organized at Ashanti Asmago, the state has never seen peace. There is always a to the life and property of the two herdsmen who are in the area. And because of that, the RECSEC took the matter up and decided to reinforce the security in the area so that those whose lives are being threatened, especially the two herdsmen, could have their peace of mind and go about their normal duties. So the situation there at the moment is not the best as we know. So the RECSEC has just deployed a number of security men to go and enforce law and order at the place.
The Accra Metropolitan Assembly has cautioned cattle farmers in the city to strictly adhere to the bylaws of the assembly and desist from allowing their animals to roam the streets, causing nuisance to the public. In a meeting with some cattle farmers in Accra, an official of the AMA, Mr. Samuel I, said any farmer whose animal is arrested in a process will serve a 6-month prison term or be made to pay a fine.
Ruminants such as sheep, goats and cows are a source of livelihood for livestock farmers. In some peri-urban areas in the countryside, they are taken out to graze, but in towns and cities, such animals are supposed to be confined to protect them and also to prevent them from roaming and causing havoc. But it is common in Accra, for instance, to see a shepherd moving a herd of cattle through residential areas and across major streets, disrupting vehicular traffic. When left on their own, they destroy crops in farms. So, the Department of Food and Agriculture under the Accra Metropolitan Assembly has met with some cattle farmers to remind them of the enforcement of its bylaws and to discuss relevant issues affecting food security and animal husbandry, also to ensure food safety and healthy animal rearing for consumption in the metropolis.
About 4 years ago, when we carried out this mass immunization, we were a bit challenged by funding, but we were able to go through about 300 cattle within 3 zones within Accra Metropolitan. We normally do it from June to September. Where the rain sets in, because that is where the disease thrives most.
The Director of Finance at the Accra Metropolitan Assembly, Mr. Sami Aye, cautioned cattle farmers to strictly abide by the Assembly's bylaws.
Under no circumstances per the bylaw that anybody will rear any animal without seeking permits from AMA. Our officers will come round and will apply the laws on you. And even if you get a permit, the animals that you are going to rear should not be nuisance or cause nuisance to the neighbors and the community as large.
A farmer at Pig Farm in Accra, Mr. Bashiru Lawal, spoke about some challenges facing cattle farmers in the metropolis. The meeting afforded the cattle farmers the opportunity to learn more about best practices in animal husbandry.
Indicates that a group of Biafran separatists have hijacked an unnamed tanker off the coast of Nigeria, demanding the release of the leader of the movement, Nnamdi Kanu. the director of Radio Biafra and head of Indigenous People of Biafra, the hijackers are reported to have threatened to blow up the vessel. Last month, the International Maritime Bureau reported that a gang of pirates chased and fired at a car carrier off the coast of Nigeria in what is believed to be the first pirate attack in the region in 2016. Last year, the Ghanaian Navy captured 8 pirates involved in the hijacking of a crude oil tanker on the high seas in Ghana. We have been joined in the studio by a maritime law and security expert, Commander Dr. Kamaldeen Ali, to discuss how the region can deal with the growing threat of piracy. Commander Dr. Kamaldeen Ali, thank you very much for making time to join us here in the studio for this discussion. First of all, can you tell us what details have emerged about the recent hijack of a vessel off the Gulf of Guinea?
There is very little details concerning the specific vessel, and that is for security reasons. So far, the name of the vessel has not been put out there in the public. The location of the hijacked vessel, even if that is known through surveillance, has also not been mentioned. But the vessel has been hijacked by people that you call insurgents, and there may be 2 dynamics or 2 underlying reasons for the hijack. One is what you have highlighted, and the other is one that is very much close to that, a development that is also taking place in Nigeria.
Give us the context, because this is not the first time that pirates have hijacked a vessel on the Gulf of Guinea. What is it about the Gulf of Guinea that interests these hijackers so much?
Piracy, of course, is a phenomenon that is across the world. For now, we can still talk about 3 piracy hotspots. We can talk about Southeast Asia, and in particular the Malacca Strait. We can talk about the decline but not completely eradicated issue of the Indian Ocean, that is the Somali piracy. And then we talk about the Gulf of Guinea. It is the unique profile of piracy in the Gulf of Guinea that makes it to be of particular international concern. The unique profile in the sense that whereas in the other 2 theaters you have normal piracy, in the case of Gulf of Guinea you have what I call insurgent piracy. And this insurgent piracy accounts for over 80% of the piracy incidents. The insurgent piracy itself is born out of the Niger Delta insurgency, and that is then interspersed with normal piracy. This is what makes piracy in the Gulf of Guinea very distinct and of great international concern. So
for those of us here in Ghana and those who do not live along the coastline of Ghana, what are the security implications?
There are wider security implications. When a vessel is hijacked, the vessel itself, the crew of the vessel, the safety and security of that vessel is at great risk. But beyond that, that vessel itself normally is taken control of by the hijackers. And the hijackers can steer that vessel or steam that vessel into another accident. And this can even be in relation to oil platforms. And given the fact that we have a number of dotted oil platforms across the sub-region, there's great risk of pirates that are manning and controlling vessels that they have hijacked. More importantly, a threat to piracy and the anatomy of piracy is very close to the threats that can also affect offshore oil platforms. And we have incidents or indications many times in the past where pirates have used the same skill that they use in hijacking vessels to pose significant threats to offshore platforms.
Apart from just being a naval officer, you are also a lawyer and you have written extensively on marine security. Can you tell us what legal measures can we take to address this threat of piracy?
This particular incident that we are talking of is one that is at the juncture between piracy and what I would call insurgency hijacking. In the sense that normal piracy is addressed by a different set of international law, and then you have insurgents piracy. And insurgents piracy, because in this case, the pirates are having a political motive, and that political motive is the action for the release of somebody that has been arrested. That is very distinct from normal piracy. So in this context, you'll be dealing with what we call the SWA Convention, the Suppression of Unlawful Acts at Sea Convention, that was adopted in 1988 with a protocol in 2005. This is the international instrument, but of course, from a national perspective, you must have it incorporated or replicated within the national legal system so that you can be able to assert jurisdiction from the legal and enforcement point of view.
Let's look at another issue which is related to this matter. It's got to do with illegal fishing. We have local fishermen who have complained about foreign vessels coming onto the waters of Ghana and engaging in illegal fishing. Shouldn't we be patrolling more on our waters? You are a naval officer to start with.
Of course, that is a matter of great concern as well, and to some extent, the human security implication of that is even wider than piracy. And given the fact that within the sub-region we have fisheries, and fisheries contribute to the livelihood of the people, it's an important issue. And I think there are patrols that are already taking place, and that needs to be intensified.
All right. Thank you very much, Commander Dr. Kamaldeen Ali, who has written extensively. He has a book on maritime security and cooperation in the Gulf of Guinea, prospects and challenges. Thank you very much, sir. We hope to speak to you on another platform at a more detailed time where we can address all these issues. So we have been speaking to Commander Dr. Kamaldeen. He is a maritime law and security expert on the issue of the latest piracy attack on the Gulf of Guinea, and we'll continue with other news. Still on the floor of the House, the lawmakers have once again been implored to break the jinx of the late start of the proceedings. For some time now, the business of the House begins way after its scheduled time of 10 a.m., sometimes getting underway at 11 or later. The Speaker of the House, Mr. Do Ajahu, said proceedings would start exactly 10 hours and urged members to comply.
I get here very early. I get into my lobby. I want to enter. I'm advised by my clerks that the members are not here at 10 o'clock. I have to wait to get a certain number of people, reasonable number, before I enter the chamber. Let us resolve from today that 10 o'clock, we all come here, leave our offices, come here, start, then you can go back to your office.
I know for a fact that some time ago, you decided to enter the chamber at 10, whether there were 2 or 3 members present. I urge you to resort to that practice.
I want to support him. In fact, unless somebody raises the issue of quorum, if it's 10 o'clock, you start at 10. But the rule should be that 10 a.m., this house should commence business. But as I said, there are exceptions.
The Ramsey site, also known as the Sakumono Lagoon, is a wetland of international importance lying along the coastal stretch between Accra and Tema. The lagoon is one of 6 Ramsey sites in the country, but the wetland is in danger of drying up due to encroachment, sand winning, littering and pollution. As Ghana joins the rest of the world to mark World Wetlands Day, environmental experts are calling on the government to step up efforts to save Ghana's wetlands from further destruction.
The Sakumo Ramsar site is one of Ghana's 6 wetlands of international importance. It plays host to a number of migratory birds from all over the world. It covers 1,340 hectares of land at Sakumono near Tema, with farmlands of 1,500 acres. During the rainy season, the Ramsar site holds excess water and gradually releases it into the Sakumono Lagoon and then into the sea to prevent flooding. Although the site has gained international recognition, massive encroachment, the discharge of liquid waste from surrounding settlements and industries, as well as illegal dumping of refuse and pollution, is gradually drying up the wetland. The situation, according to environmental experts, is not different from the other wetlands across the country. This year's World Wetlands Day is focusing on protecting and conserving the wetland. The Executive Director of Friends of Ramsar Sites, Mr. Richard Agokpa, was worried about the deteriorating state of the wetlands across the country. He says if the destruction is not stopped, rejuvenating it would cost the country more.
When you get into the field itself, you see pollution by sexual operators, putting up illegal housings, and then the burning of lorry tires in the restricted area or a sensitive, very sensitive area in the site, which is, affecting the environment and the ecological system in the area very badly.
A traditionalist who is an environmental expert, Ni Ajete Kraku, also shared his thoughts on the state of the Sakumo Ramsar site.
We challenge government to let the organizations, departments and NGOs, non-governmental organizations, play their part to improve our environment and let the system put in place work for this country. This is a good challenge to government to prove us wrong.
World Wetlands Day is celebrated annually to raise awareness on the importance of wetlands to the environment.
This is the news on GBC24 and also on GTV. Business is next.
Hello again, my name is Morris Ogbete. In business tonight, the Deputy Managing Director of the IMF, Mr. Minzu, has called on managers of economies in Africa to ensure that information pertaining to the sector is disseminated on time and in a transparent manner. Mr. Zhu's call follows an appeal made by the private sector in Ghana during an interaction in Accra.
In most developing economies, including Ghana, the mention of the name, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, evokes memories of the 80s, when the country was made to undergo structural reforms. The reforms which led to the liberalization of the economy, diversification of state-owned enterprises, and removal of subsidies in the agricultural sector initially attracted condemnation across the country. The programs which were in phases were captioned the Economic Recovery Program, ERP, and the Structural Adjustment Program, SAP. Later on, realizing the impact of the program on the poor, it was reviewed and was referred to as a program of action to mitigate social cost of adjustment, PAMSCAD. 30 years down the line, it is obvious that the IMF program had its downsides, but it helped in giving a new lease of life into the Ghanaian economy. Now Ghana is back to the Bretton Woods institution for assistance to help put the economy on sound footing. And just as it happened in those days, so it is today, with many a Ghanaian criticizing the prescription of the IMF to the economy as too a bitter pill to swallow. But when the question was posed to the Deputy Managing Director of the IMF, Mr. Zhu, about the negative perception the public has about the IMF, this was his response.
And in the past, we made a mistake, for example, in the Asia financial crisis. But we try to learn from our mistakes, and we also try to adapt to the changing environment. So in the various programs in today, we take more local circumstances into the consideration now.
Now on the progress made under the Extended Credit Facility, which Ghana signed on to from 2015 to 2017, with a financial package of $918 million, Mr. Zhu gives a thumbs up to Ghana.
The government deficit is really cutting down from 10 to 7, and further we're cutting down to 5, which is a big achievement. It's a big fiscal consolidation. And we see the inflation rates also gradually, and this year we're coming down. So if we can do that, we can manage, as I say, 2% primary surplus, and we'll see growth will pick up around 4.5. We'll be able to stabilize that at the end of this year. So that will be peaked, and the trajectory will be on downside on the next year.
However, the Deputy Managing Director expressed concern about Ghana's debt levels.
The debt ratio is around 70%. It's way high compared with your peers in the low-income countries. If we have a further slippages on the fiscal side, it will make debt management extremely difficult, debt refinancing extremely difficult.
According to the IMF official, when he met with the private sector in Ghana, they demanded transparency in the management of data that pertains to the economy.
They ask for transparency. They ask for communication. They ask for the authority to do more communication and transparency to them. They want to know the data, they want to know the factor, they want to know the authority's commitment.
But to the Ghana Union of Traders Association, IMF should be blamed for the high taxes being witnessed in the country now.
The customer comes, I charge them 3%. They are refusing to pay because it's too much. And now it has gone to 17.5. They won't be able to pay the 17. So who are we going to sell to? This is my major problem. And the taxes there is too much. As an importer, it's too much for us. If you travel, even the taxes there, 3%, 2%, and everybody knows that I have to pay it, and they are paying it. But to raise the tax from 3% to 17.5 is outrageous. We can't pay. Something has to be done about it.
Mr. Zhu admits that in the short term, the fiscal consolidation measures deployed will be hurting, but in the long run, it will help in stabilizing the forex market, inflation, and bring down interest rates, which is hovering around 35%.
Why interest rates way high? Why inflation is way high? Why exchange rates is so weak? Because the debts, because the budget deficits. So that's the deep core.
The report card of the IMF about Ghana's drive towards economic stability is good, but these measures are yet to be embraced by the larger Ghanaian population, and this calls for an intensive education about the dividend that will be derived from the 3-year bailout program. Edward Nyakun, reporting for GBC24.
And still in business, a Deputy Minister of Finance, Mrs. Mona Korte, says the IMF has expressed its willingness to help build the capacity of the staff of the Ghana Revenue Authority, as well as improve the GRA system in order to increase revenue mobilization.
The Ghana Revenue Authority GRA Workers' Union Conference comes at a time when there is unrest on the labour front, with the TUC urging the government to reduce utility prices and withdraw the petrol levy, which has resulted in the high cost of fuel prices. The expectation was that the finance minister would have some news on that regard for the workers. So, the workers were not happy when the deputy minister urged workers to bear with government for now. She, however, assured the GRA workers that the retention fund will not be tackled by government as being speculated.
Despite the recent macroeconomic challenges, the Ghanaian economy over the past 10 years have recorded a robust average growth rate of 7.4% per annum, compared to the sub-Saharan average of about 4.5% for the same period, and even less for global growth rate. The implementation of government's homegrown stabilization and reform programs and the added support from the IMF program has resulted in a gradual bounce back in economic activity and, more importantly, in the restoration of market confidence.
The General Secretary of the PSWU, Mr. Richard Ampabing, said only 38% of taxable people are covered, describing it as very worrying. He said measures must be put in place to cover all, rather than the current situation where not all Ghanaians pay tax. Mr. Ampabing was also not happy that some authorities in government collaborate with multinationals to underdeclare their investments.
We always accuse multinational enterprises of duping us in terms of taxes. And I said, they don't use magic hands. They use our own hands. So if we stop, they themselves don't have access to our books. How much revenue do our gold mining companies pay to the state? How much do they get? Who checks what? Who checks what? Is it the custom officer who should check? Does he have the implement to check?
Let's go over to the interbank market, where the cedi gained 4 pesos to the dollar to trade at 3 cedis 79 pesos. It also gained 5 pesos to the euro to sell at 4 cedis 13 pesos. It, however, slumped by 11 pesos to the pound sterling to sell at 5 cedis 62 pesos. We also bring you latest prices of gold, cocoa, and oil on the international commodities market. News Hour continues right after this break. Stay with us.
Now to the health segment. A rare case of the Zika virus being transmitted through sex, not a mosquito bite, has been reported in the U.S. A patient infected in Dallas, Texas, is likely to have been infected through sexual contact. That is according to the Center for Disease Control. The person had not traveled to infected areas, but the partner had returned from Venezuela. Zika is carried by mosquitoes and has been linked to thousands of babies being born with underdeveloped brains. It is spreading through the Americas, and the World Health Organization has declared the disease linked to the virus a global public health emergency. The American Red Cross has meanwhile urged prospective blood donors returning from Zika-hit countries to wait at least 28 days before donating blood. The Red Cross said this should apply to people returning from Mexico, the Caribbean, or Central or South America during the past 4 weeks. In another development, 2 cases of the Zika virus have been confirmed in Australia. Officials said the 2 Sydney residents had recently returned from the Caribbean. A 15-member medical team from Egypt has said goodbye to the Ministry of Health following 2 weeks of voluntary service. The team of specialists was in the country to offer medical care in deprived areas of the country where the doctor-patient ratio is unacceptably wide.
This is the second batch of such medical outreach team to have visited the country. The first was in September last year as part of an exchange program inspired by the Egyptian ambassador to Ghana, Mohammed Ahmed. The team was made up of specialists in general medicine and emergency care, anesthetists, gynecologists, maxillofacial surgeons, pediatric surgeons, among others. They were allocated medical facilities in the Volta, Upper East and Upper West, as well as northern regions, depending on the needs of the region. Within 2 weeks of voluntary outreach, the medical team in total performed 43 major surgeries and, among other things, examined over 600 referred patients. Some medical personnel from Ghana were also trained by the team.
The outcome of such a short mission was remarkable. These doctors, they came and they were distributed to 4 areas and also decided by the Ministry of Health here. And they executed a lot of medical work that we thank them for.
Ghana's ambassador to Egypt, Lieutenant Colonel Umar Sanda Ahmed, was full of praise for the team, describing the impact made as a deep one. Deputy Minister for Health, Dr. Victor Bampo, in expressing appreciation to the team, also described the program as mutually beneficial.
It's a great manifestation of the brotherhood that exists between the 2 countries. What we can say is thank you. But like Oliver Twist, will ask for more because they say the only room that does not get full is the room for improvement.
Leader of the team, Dr. Abdul Al-Ebanazi, said the team experienced a touch of Ghana's hospitality. Dr. Hafiz Adam Taher is the coordinator for the medical outreach program at the Ministry of Health. He spoke to GBC24 about the challenges encountered by the team.
The maxillofacial surgeon said he couldn't work because he needed some level of equipment and he couldn't find that, and so we needed to bring him down, to Tamale Hospital.
The voluntary medical outreach, it is hoped, will be a monthly affair.
And that's all in the health segment. The international news is next.
And in news from elsewhere, President Jacob Zuma has proposed that the Constitutional Court should order Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan and the Auditor General to determine how much he is liable to pay for non-security upgrades at his home in Kandla. It says they should provide what he calls a process that is independent and beyond political reproach. Zuma submitted the proposal to the highest court in the land on Tuesday. Exactly a week before the Constitutional Court was due to hear the matter, Zuma proposed what he calls a solution to the long-drawn-out controversy to public money spent on his home. He suggests he is ready to pay, but this time the Finance Minister and Auditor General must work out the numbers. Somalia has launched an investigation after a commercial plane made an emergency landing with a gaping hole in its fuselage in the capital, Mogadishu. There were fears that the hole in the Dalu Airlines flight bound for Djibouti was caused by a bomb. Reports say a person fell out of the hole, which appeared shortly after the plane took off from Mogadishu Airport on Tuesday. But Dalu Airlines says all 60 people on board have been accounted for. Security officials say 2 passengers were hurt in the incident. Sports is next. Stay with us.
Good evening, let's get active now. I'm Theophilus Sampa. To football now, where football fans across the country will be offered free entry to Sunday's Super Clash match between League champions Ash Gold and FA Cup winners Mediama IC. This was revealed during the launch of the 2015-2016 Super Cup match. The league winners, Ash Gold, will take on FA Cup winners Mediama SC in Sunday's Super Cup match. The game at the Accra Sports Stadium will usher in the 2015-2016 football season. The two clubs will also use the match to prepare for their CAF Interclub competition matches, which begins this month. Launching the event in Accra, both coaches and players pledge to serve fans with the best of football artistry.
I think both me and Mr. Bashi will put the stadium on fire. I mean, we want to win this. It's a trophy, and we are not here to, we don't want to lose. We want to win. We are winners, both of us, and the ones who want it have to take it. So that is what we are going to play for, and you're going to get your receipt if we are qualified enough or if we are ready enough to go out in Africa and represent Ghana.
Yes, I'm eager to win this cup because it will boost the morals of the players for the next match, which is going to be against people from Algeria. Again, it is going to be a very good lesson for me too as a moral booster. And I think our supporters will also be happy, including the management. And so this is a good opportunity, as I said, and I am eager, but not desperate.
We, as good people, we are focused and we are determined, like, we give out our best come Sunday. So I urge everybody to come and watch good football.
No matter talking, we just have to perform on the field. So come Sunday, everybody just have to be there on time, and you see what we have for you. I'm not here to talk much, as I said earlier on. So let's meet on Sunday and see what my boys have for you.
The GFA says, in appreciation of the support fans have given the game over the past years, they have decided to open the gates for free. Ash Gold, who hosts Algerian side MO Bejaya in their Champions League match on Sunday, February 14, whilst Mediama begins their Confederations Cup campaign against either Etihad of Libya or AS Sonidep of Niger later in the month. A special 2-day under-13 football gala has been launched in Accra. The competition, with support from the Ghana Education Service, is expected to help develop football at the basic school level.
The pilot charity football match is designed to support projects to enhance education as well as help promote football as a sports discipline in the primary schools in Ghana. 10 schools representing each of the Accra sub-metro of the Ghana Education Service will take part in the event.
You can mend them the way you want it for the sports. They're young to be trained, and they will be trained the way you want it.
A member of the organizing team touched on how the schools were selected.
The already champions at the sub
metro units, which every year they come together to play, right? So we decided, okay, fine. Because of time frame, then we are selecting them to come in play, because we don't want to do something different from what the Ghana Education Service is doing.
Captains of the participating schools were allowed to choose their jerseys for the competition. The event will come off on the 10th and 11th of this month at the Ajax Park at the University of Ghana, Legon.
Many thanks for watching. It was in partnership with AJPS Tornado Betters and Lunat.
Hugh Ramopolo Masekela, born April 4, 1939, is a South African trumpeter, flugelhornist, composer, and singer. He is the father of American television host Sal Masekela. As part of Black History Month, our spotlights today is on Hugh Masekela. We now take you on a 60-second jog around the world of showbiz for some snapshots of events.
And just before we draw the curtains, a quick reminder of the stories that made headlines in this bulletin. EC has started preparing towards the November 7 general elections. The Director of Public Affairs, Mr. Christian Owusu-Parry, said unlike previous exercises, the Commission will interact more with the voting public to ensure that all are well educated for a free, fair and credible election.
Additional security has been deployed to Agogo in a renewed determination to clamp down on Fulani herdsmen whose activities are reported to have led to instability and economic losses in that part of the country. Outgoing Regional Minister Mr. Peter Nefi-Mensah said a decision to act is in pursuant to a court order issued in 2013 to rid the area of the herdsmen.
Accra Metropolitan Assembly has cautioned cattle farmers in the city to strictly adhere to the bylaws of the assembly and desist from allowing their animals to roam the streets, causing a nuisance to the public.
And in Somalia has launched an investigation after a commercial plane made an emergency landing with a gaping hole in its fuselage in the capital Mogadishu. There are fears that the hole in the Dalo airline flight bound for Djibouti was caused by a bomb.
And in case you missed anything in this bulletin, we have more news at 10:30. Do join us then.
Have a good evening.